to this episode of the Development Agenda Program, broadcast on this kingdom.com platform. My name is Mzulu. Today, we are exploring, we are delving deep, we are looking at the latest trends in the communications, media, and technological spaces that have taken center stage in the contemporary business today. We are going to explore and assess the media's capacity, the challenges it faces, as well as its attitudes and willingness to adapt to these technological changes and advances. On my platform, I have the station director for the Sky Alpha HD, Ndade Kabano. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Over the last 2 decades or so, there have been vast, steady shifts, but as well sustained changes in the communications, in media, and technological spaces, and these have revolutionized. They have added value to the business, particularly if we look at the media sector. Our first today is to look at the implications, positive and otherwise, of these advances on media as business. There have been fears of late that these advances have the potential to render traditional conventional media communications as well as other technological platforms obsolete. Especially they don't live up to the speed and the pace of these advances. What's your take on this?
First, thank you, Teto, for the invitation. My take is that nothing will render traditional media obsolete, which might sound strange coming from somebody who works in digital media and new media. When the pen came, it didn't render what preceded it obsolete. When the typewriter came, when the computer came, there's always advancement. But it doesn't mean that the previous thing ceases to exist. You still write notes, I'm sure. I mean, I'm from a different generation to you, but I still write notes. My nieces are from a different generation, but they still write notes. So all of these things intersect, sure, at the place where they are necessary for us. They are tools that we need. But one doesn't render the other obsolete. There's a famous song, Video Killed the Radio Star, and the idea was that once music videos, platforms like MTV had come in, it would then kill other media. And it doesn't. Actually, what it does is to enhance the platform. And why do I say enhance? Traditional media currently has an issue where it seems like people are migrating towards digital media. So it seems like there is a move that says, we are no longer doing this, we are now doing that. When in actual fact, if traditional media were to take a look at figures, to take a look at numbers and take a look at the data, they would recognize that there's actually still space for them to produce specific things, to produce stuff, content that will talk to still a broad audience. Mass market appeal is always going to be there, and mass market appeal is always going to go for what is cheap. That's what traditional media offers. Digital media is an enhancement thereof, and so actually the two have a symbiotic relationship.
We are living in an information era, and to some extent, some say in a data intelligence era where data, available information, its usage, its storage, and how it has revolutionized the business sector. And my take is, has the information or data intelligence or information power, is it offset? Has it challenged the traditional coercive power that we've had different power differentials or power dynamics? We have had the coercive power, we have had the charismatic power, we have had the referent power, we have had the family power, of so-called the masculine power that our male folk exercise over their female counterparts. But now we are talking of information power, and to what extent has this power offset the other traditional forms of power?
It's a good question, very good question. Let's have a look at something that might look controversial. There's currently a situation in the Middle East, Israel and Gaza.
Yes.
Twitter has become one of the biggest platforms for current affairs and news media. Prior to Elon Musk buying it, it was quite well regulated, and even the platform or the users of the platform were aware of how well the regulation went. That regulation also drove the narrative, and it's up to you to decide whether that narrative was a good one or not. But there was also very definitely a narrative. With the decentralization, or what Musk has tried to do, I think, with the platform, is you're getting a lot more real-time information from a side that you probably wouldn't have otherwise. So you're finding a lot of information from Gaza, from Palestinians, who are giving you real-time, explicit content and showing you what the situation on the ground is. I think that speaks specifically to the point you are making about information power and the difference thereof. Because if we had relied solely on the traditional power, the traditional media, the traditional information powerhouses, the narrative would have remained the same. We would have got party line and nothing else. But because there's now this opposing side, you have a much broader spectrum of information to choose from. It's fine. When you started your question, I was about to say, I wonder if we are taking on too much information. But I think I've just answered myself in that actually no, we might actually not be taking on enough information here. It's an interesting paradigm.
Okay. As consumers of information, they are going through many transitions. They were consumers. That as a consumer, you wait for the producer to provide you a service or product.
Right.
They are standing on the receiving end. But now the advent of the latest communication, media and television advances have changed that dynamic. We now have the consumers becoming producers and also becoming distributors.
Right.
That change of roles, to what extent has it impacted on the traditional media? I think I'll make a comparison from time to time to establish the extent to which, as a businessman in the media sector,
Right.
should I really be intransigent in terms of change, maybe change apathetic, especially in this era of information?
I think if you're stagnant, you're going backwards.
Okay.
I think that's and I think that's true just generally in life, but especially in information technology and media. I keep referring to Twitter because that's the medium that I use most. But you can actually track the change in how people view information and media through watching Twitter. When Twitter Spaces became a thing, it was incredible to see how much alternative narrative suddenly started to become a thing. And this is kind of across the globe. So where we might have been listening to just one thing, we suddenly have another. Everybody is now a journalist. If I'm at the scene of an accident, I can shoot the thing, post it, even write a caption. You can do everything that a traditional journalist would have done on your phone in real time and have it out. So the dynamic has definitely changed. We no longer need to wait for journalist X to break a major story. I don't know if you will remember the Ganda saga. The late journalist Mandy Rousseau, Caroline Rousseau, broke this story, and it took a while for it to get into the mainstream, in spite of her speaking about this largesse that seems to be creeping into the scope. If that were to happen now, if that same story were to happen now, if she were to have the resources that she has now to have broken that story, it would have broken like wildfire. It would have broken and spread like wildfire. You wouldn't have had that 3-4 week lag before people eventually start to take to it. So the immediacy of it as well is important to note.
I'm interested, you have made a good example. In our case, you find a story that is in the news, so to speak, or that is a running story. It has been broken by social platforms, and we have a series of newspapers waiting to go to bed 3, 4, 5 days after that story is broken.
Yeah.
And of course, for radio, I think they are safe.
Yes.
Because they can use their spot it.
That's right.
Yes. But now, my emphasis is on to what extent is the traditional media facing this challenge, and what should they do to offset that? Because truly speaking, if your newspaper comes on Friday, the story breaks on Sunday, you have 6 days.
By the time they write the story, so much water has flown under the bridge. I mean, the story is completely different. So, well, the first thing I think is that the traditional media has to find a way to counterbalance that immediacy. So you can't say, well, we're waiting for Sunday, we're waiting for Friday to publish. Something must have happened during the week. You have a website, you have an online platform. What are you doing with your online platforms to make sure that you are filling the gap for the consumer? Because as a journalist, you're telling a story. You're trying to bring the news to the people. So you can't say, I'm going to wait until Friday to bring this news to the people. So what are you doing to ensure that in that period you have got news out? There's a newspaper here who are doing something that I really like. They have a platform on Facebook that they use, and they do visual media. I think it's really, really good, and that then gives the opportunity for them to say, well, during the week, before we get to the actual nub of the matter with our story on Friday. So on Friday we can do a deep dive, we can do a full, complete piece. But here's the breaking story. Here's what we know. Here's what we have. And then the following day they can do a follow-up. Remember yesterday we said X. Here's what's happening now. So,
and especially for conventional media, when you find that you write the straightforward news. The current affairs, I can say. But now we have a few analytical newspapers in this country which can say the same stories that ran throughout the week. Now, how do we now analyze, give the readers, give the viewers, give the listeners, if it is for radio, the news behind news.
Yeah.
So that while they will be invested in this information about the week, towards the weekend, we have to give them now the critical aspects of it. Now let's dwell on the factors that influence maybe the ability of media to adapt. Maybe let's talk of literacy rates, literacy factors on the side of the consumers. Maybe let's talk of production capacity. A newsroom, just an ordinary newsroom that used to have 2 reporters, editor, cameraman. Now we should have the whole bunch, the whole fully fledged production.
There should be people who look after social media.
Yes.
There should be people who look after production and post-production, like you say. It does. The traditional media room has to look different.
Yeah.
If your newsroom still, like you say, junior reporter, senior reporter, columnist, editor, I think you have missed a big trick. Because what are your online platforms doing?
Yes.
There's another thing that worries me, that seems to be a trend, which is to have a quote-unquote intern who will look after the social media.
Yes.
Social media isn't a by the way, it isn't an also-ran. Social media is a very real platform that you should be using and making financial sense of, So you must have somebody who is trained, you must have somebody who, again, another worrying trend is, fine, once they have found that skill set, they will then overload that person. Okay, whoever they find as the social media specialist, that person will then be doing the job of 10 people.
Yes.
It can't make sense.
And now it talks to investment, serious investment in production. There's been talk of the convergence models that can be applied by media entrepreneurs or proprietors. We talk of the blending of the traditional media. You can have your traditional newspaper. You have the digital aspect to it, or the digital side to it. You have the social media platform. But converging, complementing each other, so that you close all those gaps that might be left by your focus on one form of media. Now, let's see, before we go for a short break, let's maybe look at the consumer needs or the ability of the media house to satisfy the consumer side and also be able to grab a greater market share, not only of the audiences but also advertisers. To what extent are advertisers changing as well? Are they changing with the trend? But let's take a short break. We'll come back. Welcome back. We are still on the topic on the advances in communication, media, as well as technological setups, particularly looking at the media sector. We are looking at challenges, opportunities, as well as the attitudes of the traditional media to adapt to change. Let's look at now the external or otherwise factors that influence the media proprietors. Say, for instance, to what extent are they able to grab a greater market share within this era of shifts and sustained changes?
I think it's about data analysis. I think you have to understand what the data is saying. In order to understand what the data is saying, first you have to have the data. So you need to constantly be seeing what the trends are. You need to constantly be monitoring what is happening, where are my numbers growing, where are my numbers shrinking, and understanding what that means for your business. I say to somebody all the time, we have this perception that marketing is about great ideas. It's about a pretty concept, it's about art. But actually it's a science. Because marketing is going to drive and influence numbers. And that's the critical thing in the profession that we're in media. It is acutely important to be aware of what the trends are, what the dynamics are, and certainly what the data is saying.
But practically speaking, do media houses conduct marketing analysis to look at the trends? Where are we, and to what extent are these trends influencing or affecting our decision making? Are we growing? Are we stagnant? Or are we regressing? And those should be influenced by, those should be only fingertips of marketing.
It's a good question, because if you are growing, you want to know where you're growing.
Yeah.
Because if you're growing somewhere and not growing somewhere else, why is that? It's a good question. How are we doing that analysis? I don't know whether we are. I see a lot of media owners complaining about nameless, faceless Facebook media sources. And I don't know what we are doing to counteract that. Because that's what our problem must be.
Should we counteract or should we leverage?
That's actually what I mean. I'm saying we must see these guys clearly. There's a business model there. What are we doing to see that we? And the reason I say counterbalance is so that it makes sense for us. So I take your point as well that we should leverage it absolutely, but there's a market is the point, and what are we doing to ensure that we are part of that market and growing our pie there? You know.
But do we have companies and organizations that undertake audits, audience audits, audiences for radio, audiences for newspapers, audiences for television, even the latest newspapers online? There should be companies, private companies.
Yeah. I mean, the simple answer is no. There just isn't. I mean, how do people buy media in this country? My view is that it's perceptive value. I'll tell you a story quickly if you'll allow me that is touch. I had a client come to us and say they would like airtime on a morning show, and then tell us what that airtime was going to be about. I said, oh, okay, if that is the case, if that's what you're looking for, then I think the market that you're looking for is actually in the afternoon. And this person told me, no, my listener is listening in the morning. I said, okay, fine. They bought the airtime. I was pleased with that. But I was looking at the data because we provide data. That's actually our core competency. The fact that we can track when the listener is listening, what listeners are listening at what time, at what point, how many. I then listened or tracked when that advert.
So when you say we should tell us.
Oh, sorry. My platform Sky Alpha HD,
Okay.
The country's first online radio station. So this company had bought time, and it got a good market share. But I then showed them that, you see, in the afternoon, this is what the market share would have been. And this marketing person looked at me and said, no, that doesn't make sense. But the reason why I say it's perceptive value is because that's when they and people they know are listening to the radio. So you can't use your perceptive value and define that as the data when the data shows you something else.
No, now that is the question. What informs a marketer to take a decision to say, I'm advertising with Sky?
With Sky Alpha.
Yeah. And one, especially based on what we've just discussed, that there are no marketing analysts or analysts that are undertaken. And now, if you are the high alpha HD, and you are soliciting advertising from this company.
Yeah.
What ammunition are you using to force them, to advertise?
Yeah.
How do we encourage them? How to advertise?
So, as I say, our core competency is that we have got data. I can show you X number of people listened. Those people were listening at Y place. They were listening on Z platform, right? So I can give you data that will then allow you, or then assist you, to better tailor whatever advert that you are doing for that consumer, right? Which is again what marketing, as I understand it, is. It's a science. You're trying to constantly find the archetypal consumer of your product so that you can send your message to them.
But do they believe you're ready? Do they believe to that date?
I don't think they do. I'm saying it is my view that the perceptive value continues. We once had a marketing director tell us, no, people listen to another terrestrial radio station. I said, but I don't know what is informing you that people listen to that terrestrial radio station. I'm saying this is how many people listen to my radio station at this time, my online platform at this time. What is informing you? He said, no, I know, I've been doing this for a long time.
Because what I suspect is that a marketer, an ordinary marketer, will say, bring me a hard copy, if they newspaper, a hard copy of this newspaper so that they can see that it's in circulation. Tell me if it's radio that is found on this frequency.
Yes.
So what do you do to bring them on board? Maybe do some pitching to sell.
Yes, we do. We pitch all the time. HD pitches all the time, and we pitch to small, medium, and large business. We in fact, our mandate is to support small business as best we can. So we try and give as much airtime as we possibly can to the small businesses. But we are constantly in communication with medium and large enterprises to say, look, come and take some airtime. And in fact, at inception, we were offering free airtime and saying, look at what return you can get on this. So I think actually that was quite successful, and I think we were quite lucky. As odd as this sounds, we were quite lucky with COVID because we were ready to broadcast from home, where I think other media platforms were still having to adapt to.
Yes, definitely. Before we take a short break, or let's go for a short break. Afterwards, we're going to look at the ethical dimensions, the professional dimensions to brought about by these transitions in communications, media. Welcome back. We are still on the topic of advances in communication, media, as well as technological developments that are taking stage nowadays in this information era. We are with Dademolo from High Alpha HD as a station director. Dademolo, let's now look at the professional aptitude. In the traditional media, ethics is a big thing. Professional conduct and practice is a big thing because it helps to keep the profession within limits, professional limits. It also helps in terms of injecting respectability for the profession as well as the sanctity of the profession, especially from those who come from outside. During these digital transitions, to what extent are the traditional ethics of truthfulness, accuracy, balance, to what extent are they being affected?
Completely. I say it in jest, but we have taken all of those wonderful things that you've spoken about exploitation. And so when you replace them with sensation, everything has to be bigger. The next sensation has to be bigger than the previous one. Right? So if you said one thing that is out there today, the following day you have to trump that. So you have to say something more than that. You have to say something more explosive. Then after that you have to say something more explosive. Then you have to show something that's explosive. Then you have to say something more explosive. So every time there's an incremental increase in your sensation so that you can capture the market. Because that's the market that you've now spoken to. I see a number of podcasts that are emerging. I like the idea. They call it the democratization of information. I'm quite happy with it. I'm quite happy, like I've said, to have different voices, adding their opinion, changing the narrative, however. My concern is this idea that in order to change the narrative, we must be sensation. And you then watch a host of these podcasts, a number of these podcasts, become increasingly more sensational even when there's no need. That concerns me as not just a consumer of media, but also as a proprietor of a media house. I get worried that then my media house is going to get dragged into this melee where sensation seems to be the order of the day. So, hey, if that's what's selling, perhaps then we should get involved in that. That is a big concern of mine.
But are there avenues for subjecting these to gatekeeping, traditional gatekeeping, editing protocols, so that the conventional, professional, and ethical life?
It's a good question. I've always wondered how do you regulate that space? How do you find a way where you say you can't do that? And then when the person asks, no, but it's my human right, it's my basic human right to say, no, actually, it's not your human right. The popular refrain that your rights end where my nose begins, that must be something that is reinforced. But even beyond that, how do we get the so-called citizen journalist to understand that your sensation cannot trump the ethics of what we are doing? I don't know, I think it's a conundrum that we must answer.
But now I think the critical issue, I know UNESCO has tried to come up with regulatory guidelines, especially for the digital media. The question is, to what extent is society or media organizations able to adapt so that they can use the same guidelines? Now let's look at the transition of the digital migration. How do we ensure speedy migration from the traditional and conventional ways of communication and media and technology so that we live up to the pace? Yes.
Allow me to digress just for a minute, and I'll try and link my point. In my other life, I do some consultancy for a technology company, a big technological firm. And some of the things that they are already doing with 5G are mind-blowing. They are doing humanless farming, just using 5G poles. They're able to herd cattle, take them from one plain to another. They're able to see which land is grazed properly, which land is overgrazed, and move accordingly. They are also doing the same thing with mining. They already have driverless vans that are doing all kinds of things on actual mining sites. The mining sites themselves are humanless, and that is taking away the human error element and just making it kind of micro laser type precision. And so I think that might be the case, or it might need to be the case for media as well. We might need for technological advancement to take us to that place where we are so good, that we no longer, we have cut out the bulk of errors. I know that doesn't answer your question, but I'm just thinking about the technological advancement and its propensity for what it can do for the profession and for the consumer.
We are heading towards closure of the problem, but I want us now to look at the skills sets, the knowledge, impartition of knowledge on the consumer. The consumer wakes up every morning, every day, confronted with these huge volumes of information that come their way. It comes from Facebook, content comes from emails, comes from WhatsApp, and there's this huge overflow of information coming our way. What can we do, or what skills can we be provided with so that we are able to sift through and be able to competently select what we consume, so that we avoid misinformation, disinformation, fake news, hate speech.
Very important. I think there should constantly be an upskilling of the consumer. I don't know whether it is the regulator's job to do that, or whether it is media platforms' job to do that. Maybe it's a collective responsibility that we all have, but we should constantly be upskilling the average Joe So to say, here's what's out there, here's all the information that's out there, here's how to start discerning your media engagement, here's how to find whether or not this is information, misinformation, disinformation, and make that mainstream. It shouldn't be something that is gate-kept by journalists and media. No, we are going to decide what is misinformation and disinformation. It should be there. It should be out in the public. There should be that upskilling that's happening where the average man on the street has decided, oh, okay, no, I've seen this before. This is disinformation, or it's misinformation.
But now, what also do we do to ensure to present that information is presented in an ethical manner, professional manner? Do we have fact-checking systems, fact-checking companies? In some countries we have those facilities, especially for the benefit of the consumer.
I haven't seen that, but we do need those kinds of things. We definitely need those kinds of things. I was watching the parliamentary process the other day, and listening to our parliamentarians. I always say to my wife, I wish politicians wouldn't lie. They can use subterfuge and they can use omission, but I wish they wouldn't tell bold-faced lies. And perhaps if we had fact-checkers, that would discourage that propensity to just tell lies.
Definitely. Okay, at this juncture, I want us to open the floor for our participants.
I'm very happy to be here with Nadine. I think I will have two questions. The first one will go out to Nadine. We acknowledge the great trend and the very interesting mileage that has been covered by the new technological era, especially on the media. You have talked about the use of Twitter and how, in my mind, it still remains one media platform where, like you said, everyone is a journalist and you can be free to post everything and we can get live stories as they happen on the ground, unfiltered. In as much as we appreciate that advancement, there's also a bad side that comes with it. There's also, like you're saying, the ethical check that is not put in place, or there are no mechanisms of fact checking, like that they have said. Now, would we say in the future, if we leave it unkept, is it in the best interest of the consumer, so much so that the consumer is left to decipher what is correct for consumption and what is not correct for consumption? Or do we really need to put in place a regulatory check on the facts and the truthfulness of the substance or the content? That would be my first question to you. To you, Nelistato, I think we have, or we need to add also on this issue of the technological development, the information dissemination, especially not only on business. Yes, business is a bigger factor, but also we need factors on livelihood. That is our socio-economic and maybe cultural enhancement, especially in this era, so that we all know that business is only focused on, in as much as we are consumers of business, maybe in the far end or in the receiving end, but also issues like livelihood come also, or should be included also in that package. Now, can you say, as part of the institute, is there any maybe long-term plan to include or even put as a center stage information dissemination on livelihood for the betterment and the good governance of the country in general? From my background, I think livelihood actually should be put forth even before we can enhance other things, education maybe, the right to health, stuff like that, because you find that we're dealing with people who do not even know their basic fundamental rights. But I think the use of media, in your view or in the perspective of the institute that you're leading, could be used profitably to enhance that. So it's more than a comment and stuff like that. Thank you very much.
Okay, let's now respond to the questions for Ndadimgo. Thanks very much, Ndadimgo, for the questions. I think his first question directed to Ndadimgo is about the underside of consumers. He has emphasized the issue of fact-checking and the regulatory mechanisms, the ability of the citizens and consumers to detect, as well as carefully and competently select what they imbibe.
I think it's such a good question, and it's something that I grapple with myself in Tadimugoli. When we started this venture at Sky Alpha HD, when we went to go get our license, I was telling my business partner it was my view that we ought not be regulated. I was saying that I don't think platforms such as ours should be regulated. And he was asking me why I said that. I said, because I think we do something different to what traditional media does, in that we're servicing a broader market, and that the regulation will almost happen, it will almost happen organically. To some extent, that's still my view, and when I consume X, whatever it is now, when I consume Twitter content, I'm still always self-regulating. I'm always deciding for myself whether or not I'm going to engage with this content, or whether or not I'm going to engage with that content. I think the bulk of adults do that anyway. We self-regulate. My concern with the regulator is what I spoke about earlier in terms of the platform before it was owned by Musk, and for all his misgivings, I think the one thing Musk has done is made the platform more democratic. So you do have broader views. Unfortunately, some of those views are to the extreme. But that's, unfortunately, you can't have your cake and eat it. So if you're going to accept broader views, then you're going to have to accept those wild views as well. I often say that what happens on social media is that you give the lunatic fringe a voice. So yours is to decide whether you want to listen to the lunatic fringe or whether you mute it and say, okay, well, you've made your noise, but I choose not to engage it.
Okay. The question that's directed to me relates to information dissemination, particularly if you intend to ensure livelihoods, the people's livelihoods. If you look at the traditional media setup, we are told to perform three main functions: information provision, education, as well as entertainment. And if you take it from there, information provision, which means we have a consumer or a listener, a viewer, or a reader outside who is a consumer of this information. But now the challenge that we have is that we have a one-way street of information provision, and feedback is either delayed or not there at all. So that's the challenge. And that deflects away from the democratic aspect that we're talking about, that media perform a democratic function. But now democratic function has to be complete. We should also offer the citizens an opportunity to also reflect back and give feedback. And communication is very nature should be a give and take. It should help the receiver and the giver or the sender, and that interaction should be maintained. So now we are asking the Governance Institute. As an institute, we embrace, we uphold good governance principles. And one principle that we uphold is that of public participation. And citizens should participate in democratic discourse of their country. They should participate in the development agenda of their country. They should be part and parcel of the trajectory of the sphere of communication in their country, so that they are better citizens, active citizens, so to speak. We don't promote docile, inactive citizens who are just imbibers of information and they believe what they are told. One engages citizens. So our quest is to ensure that information that we take to the people through our outreaches, we have community outreaches, we have village and community animations, which are platforms which are intended to elicit information from the citizens to the governors, and also take information back to the citizens on what governors are saying. That program is going to start next year, where we have this interaction between the citizens and the governors, so that there is really traction in terms of what citizens are doing and what the governors are doing. And that link will help us to analyze the extent to which democracy and good governance are taking place in this country. So I think that will now go to the livelihoods. People will be active in the economic activity of their country only when they have information. When they know the opportunities offered by the government, when they know opportunities that are there in the business sector, that information will get at their fingertips. And that information will help them to make informed and solid decisions in terms of how they become, not to be passive recipients of information, especially towards elections. We don't want to break from that traditional norm where citizens only become active only towards elections. In between, they are just inactive and passive. And even during electioneering, they are tending to passive recipients of information, because these manifestos are just one way. There's no feedback side. So we want to create that citizenry that is competent, citizenry that is active, that is demanding accountability by its own, on its own, is able to demand accountability from those they put into office. I think I've responded to it.
You did actually both of them.
That as we come towards the end of the program, I want us just to look at one thing. Now, moving forward, we are living in the fourth industrial revolution, which has these or what we discussed. I want us to reflect on artificial intelligence, especially with regard to media. Are we moving there where media, or are we already there in other jurisdictions where the media is using the platform of artificial intelligence? And what implications are there? Also for lagging behind, and also in terms of to what extent is it palatable?
Yeah.
Is it a palatable system?
I write a weekly column in a local newspaper, The Reporter. One of my columns was actually done on an artificial intelligence platform, OpenAI, which is, I think, the most popular AI platform at the moment. And this thing, this column I wrote, it took me about 4 tries to try and get the platform to churn out what I was looking for. I wrote something for it, it wrote something back for me. It wasn't what I wanted. I wrote something for it, it wrote something back. So is AI? Yes, AI is definitely happening. There's no doubt about it. It has infiltrated even mainstream media. It's there. What is going to be the extent to which it has an impact on our fraternity? That is what I'm interested in. I don't think you're going to have artificial intelligence writing stories because I don't think that the platform is smart, but I don't know that the platform will be smart enough. You see, the thing about humans, what distinguishes us from the animals is emotion. You can't teach emotion. You can't teach it to a platform, right? So perhaps there will be things that AI can do, but they won't be able to do the bulk of stuff. Animation and things like that, it's definitely going to affect. I don't know if you have seen those AI pictures that have become popular on the internet. There are young Nelson Mandela. There's Nelson Mandela in chains. There is the Pope dressed up. Those kinds of things are going to become more and more. They're going to become more and more common. But will AI have necessarily a place in our fraternity? Let's wait and see.
Okay. Just last bite. Just 2 things moving forward. What should the contemporary media do to live up to the speedy, the fast, the swift, and the unrelenting pace with which the latest trends in technology and media and communications are moving, so that they don't lag behind?
Adopt and adapt. TikTok platforms, YouTube platforms, social media platforms. Every media house has to have a footprint on these platforms. I think to not have them is to bury your head in the sand. There's nothing to be gained by not having them. So definitely have them. Adopt and adapt. But the other thing speaks to your question about ethics. Maintain your ethics. Maintain your journalistic integrity. That's what's actually going to take you further. That's why I was saying there is a market for traditional media. There always will be. When you tell a story, when a traditional media house tells a story, the general inclination, the natural inclination is to believe it because we know that you have that integrity. You have already shown that you have that integrity. whereas new media must still prove themselves. So, to answer your question, I think those two things are the most important: adopt, adapt.
Thank you very much for your time. We have come to the close of our program. We have taken a deep dive into the latest trends in communication, media, and technology. We have looked at these advances in terms of their effect on the conventional media, in terms of how they affect how media operates, the challenges, the opportunities, as well as the future outlook of this media. We have also observed the markets to which this media are exposed, their ability to grab the market share, the trends and factors that affect their ability to keep up with these trends. On my platform, I had Ndati Kaberonono, who is the station director for the Sky Alpha HD, only and only digital radio station in Lesotho. I think that so far, that thanks very much for your time.
No, thank you for having me at this time.